HOA, Karen cut off my wife's dialysis machine over a bylaw violation. Welcome to Dabsy Stories. Drop a like on the video and subscribe so we can continue making videos like this one. Late evening shadows stretched across our driveway as I guided my wife Maria from our car into the garage. Her dialysis machine sat on its rolling stand beside us, soft hum filling the air. We just returned from the clinic, 4 hours of blood filtered, toxins removed. This ritual kept her alive. I wheeled the machine inside and flicked on the lights when Karen Peterson appeared at our gate, flashlight in hand despite the porch lights. Her crisp blazer and stiletto heels seemed absurd under the dusty garage door. She pointed at the dialysis stand. Mr. Harris, I'm here to enforce HOA Bylaw 9.2C. No commercial equipment may operate on residential property without approval. You must shut that machine off immediately or face daily fines of $2,000. Maria's eyes widened, fear flickering in her gaze. She gripped my arm. Don't let her, she whispered, voice tight. The machine droned at her side. I stepped forward. Karen, this isn't a toaster or a power washer. It's a medical device. State-licensed, FDA-approved, vital to Maria's survival. You can't cut her life support over a permit. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. She tapped her clipboard. HOA rules don't exempt medical devices. You need a permit for any non-standard appliance drawing over 20 amps. You have until midnight to comply. My pulse thundered. I glanced at Maria's pale face, her hand on the dialysis tubing. Every second off the machine brought her closer to fluid overload, to toxins building in her blood. You'd kill her for a bylaw violation? I hissed. Karen did not flinch. Rules are rules. I'll file a citation at dawn. I seized the machine's plug. You leave us no choice. I yanked it from the outlet. The hum stopped. Maria gasped, clutching her chest. Lights flickered as the generator I bought for emergencies kicked in, another violation. But her life was at stake. Maria sank into the wheelchair, eyes shut against pain. I pressed the emergency button on her alert device. Code blue at home. The shriek cut through the still night. Neighbors emerged in robes, flashlights bobbing. Mrs. Nguyen, across the street, grabbed my shoulder. Do something, she cried. I backed away from Karen. You'll pay for this. Karen raised her chin. I'll see you in court. Sirens wailed before dawn. Paramedics burst in and rushed Maria back onto the machine. I followed, heart hammering. She cried out when they reattached her access port. Outside, I found Karen retreating down the driveway, clipboard under her arm. I yelled, You tried to murder her. She froze, then vanished into the street. At the hospital, Maria's blood pressure skyrocketed before stabilizing under emergency dialysis. I sat by her side, unshaven, clothes dirty with dust from the generator. She reached for my hand. You saved me, she whispered. Detective crews arrived with officers at midnight. They served papers for attempted manslaughter and elder endangerment. HOA rules don't apply to life-saving equipment, Cruz said. We've traced your complaints to the board. Karen's in for questioning. Maria closed her eyes. I pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'll fight for you, I vowed. Outside, the generator's hum died as the police disabled it. The night grew silent again. Tomorrow, I would take our case to the HOA board and the courts. No bylaw would ever override Maria's right to live. And Karen Peterson would face every legal consequence for her deadly enforcement. The morning after the incident, I barely slept. Maria lay in the hospital bed, pale and weak, hooked to an emergency hemodialysis unit. Her eyes fluttered open as I sat beside her, clutching her hand. I'm okay, she whispered. We'll get them. Determination glinted in her gaze. Detective Cruz arrived with a folder. We're pressing charges, he said quietly. Attempted murder by gross negligence, elder endangerment, and criminal mischief for tampering with medical equipment. I nodded, relief mingling with outrage. What about the board? I asked. He tapped his pen. Emails show they approved her actions. We've got enough for conspiracy charges. That afternoon, I returned home to gather our HOA paperwork. Inside the living room, I found a stack of notices, citations for unauthorized generator use, noise violations, and a new demand: install a commercial-grade exhaust hood for the dialysis machine's pump at our expense. I ripped them in half. My blood boiled. I called our attorney, Simone Lee. She agreed to file an injunction and a suit for medical interference. But there's more, she said. I dug into your HOA's finances. That generator notice was timed to coincide with your insurance audit. They knew cutting off your machine would pressure you to pay up. My hands shook. So it was personal and profit-driven, I muttered. Simone sighed. They engineered a crisis. That evening, I wheeled Maria home under a God's quiet sky. She held her oxygen cannula and eyed the unused generator. I never thought our own community would turn on us, she said softly. I squeezed her hand. They did, but we'll turn them upside down. Over the next week, our lawsuit and the police investigation dominated the neighborhood. Flyers appeared on doors, protect medical rights and no HOA overreach. A crowd of neighbors gathered outside the community hall at dusk, chanting, medical choice, no HOA strife. At the emergency board meeting, the room crackled with tension. Board President Linden spoke first, her voice strained. We enforce safety. I rose to speak. Safety? You tried to kill my wife. You gambled her life for bylaws and profit. I laid out the evidence, the generator demand timed with her audit, emails from Karen mocking her dialysis dependency, and records of her consulting with a contractor on medical exhaust installation fees. Gasps echoed as I disclosed the plot twist. The HOA's attorney also stood to gain. He owned the exhaust hood company. He'd drafted the bylaw's fine schedule, then marketed the solution. Conflict of interest was obvious on paper. A ripple of shock and anger ran through the room. Detective Cruz stepped forward, placing laminated arrest warrants on the table. Karen Peterson and HOA attorney Gregory Shaw are under arrest for solicitation to commit gross negligence and extortion, he announced. Officers moved to handcuff them. Several board members tried to protest. Others shrank in their seats. That night, Maria reclined in her wheelchair by the pond, now fenced only for safety signs and life rings. She gazed at the koi that swam quietly below the surface. We won't let them hurt anyone else, I said, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. She nodded, tears glinting. Thank you, she whispered. Community leaders voted to suspend all HOA enforcement powers pending a full audit. Neighbors volunteered to form a medical oversight subcommittee to advise any future rules. Friendship and solidarity sprouted where fear had grown. As the moon rose, I wheeled Maria back inside. The generator remained idle, a symbol of our victory. She pressed my hand. They tried to drown me in bills and silence, she said, but we turned on the light. Tomorrow, I would file for Karen and Shaw's attainder and press for medical rights statutes at the state level. For now, we rested in hard-won peace, our community awakened to protect life, not property values. Dawn broke cold as I wheeled Maria onto our front porch. The morning air bit at her cheeks, but she smiled when the sun peeked over the neighbor's roof. Her treatment schedule was back on track. The injunction held, and her clinic-supplied portable unit hummed safely on our circuit. Inside, I found an envelope slipped under the door. The HOA board president, Linden, had sent resignation letters, every single member stepping down. A handwritten note read, "We failed you. Please accept our apologies." I felt a flicker of relief. Change was in motion. At the hospital that afternoon, Maria's blood tests finally showed stabilized toxins. She held my hand across her bedside table. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger. "I feel normal again." I squeezed her fingers. We did it. But the victory didn't last. 2 days later, an urgent knock came at our door. Deputy Ramirez stood in full uniform, face grim. "You need to see this," he said, handing me a sealed police report. I opened it to read, HOA attorney Gregory Shaw found dead in his office, apparent suicide. My stomach twisted. Shaw's law firm was empty when police entered. A note on his desk, typed, read, "No mercy for medical killers, KP." The initials matched Karen Peterson. I exhaled sharply. Karen had escaped arrest and was now targeting those she blamed. Plot twist. Under Shaw's body, detectives found Karen's blood on the handle of a letter opener, her prints all over. She'd murdered him, staged it as suicide to pin guilt on the HOA, and sent vengeance to Linda's doorstep. They traced her to a fugitive safe house. Ramirez's eyes met mine. She's our next target. That night, as rain battered the windows, I packed Maria's overnight bag. We leave at dawn, I said. The police will escort Shaw's body and secure Linden's house. We can't risk another attack. Maria nodded, bravery shining through weariness. Let's go. In the early gray, I wheeled her to the sheriff's SUV. Ramirez slid in beside us, radio crackling. We'll get her, he promised. As we drove past our silent street, the generator idle, the pond fence glimmering, hope and dread tangled in my chest. Justice had saved her life once. Now it had to save us from a killer who wore rules like weapons. The courthouse loomed gray and cold as we arrived for Karen Peterson's trial. Maria, seated beside me in her wheelchair, wore her hospital robe under a tailored jacket, her resilience personified. Reporters clustered at the entrance, cameras aimed. Inside, the gallery filled with neighbors I had once waved to in passing, now allies in our fight. Karen sat at the defense table, hair pulled back, wrists cuffed. Next to her, attorney Gregory Shaw's empty chair served as a ghostly reminder of her murderous revenge. When the judge entered, silence fell. The prosecutor opened with a summation of Karen's crimes: conspiracy to commit attempted murder, extortion, obstruction of medical care, and the murder of Gregory Shaw. Each charge carried decades. The gallery trembled at footage replayed from our home security cameras. Karen prying the dialysis plug, her smirk in the flashing light. Then the chilling letter opener scene. Shaw's body, Karen's blood, her confession typed and left on his desk. Next, I took the stand. I described the night I found Maria struggling for life as the dialysis unit went silent, the fear in her eyes as her heart raced and toxins built. I recounted Karen's cold refusal to relent until we paid fines we could never afford. My voice cracked as I spoke of the clinic's emergency team reviving Maria, their glare of disbelief when I explained the cause. The judge nodded gravely and called Maria forward. Despite frailty, she testified with quiet strength, "I thought I would die that night. The machine saved me. Karen tried to kill me for profit." Tears glistened as she held the judge's gaze. I lived to see justice. Detective Cruz then presented forensic evidence tying Karen to Shaw's death: fingerprints on the weapon, her DNA under Shaw's fingernails, and the flight itinerary to her safe house. He described her motive, fear of prosecution, and her methodical planning. This wasn't a crime of passion, Cruz concluded. It was cold, calculated, and born of entitlement. Karen's attorney attempted mitigation, citing stress and misunderstanding of bylaws, but the judge cut him off. "You weaponized rules against a dying woman, then murdered an innocent man to cover your tracks. That betrayal of trust demands the maximum penalty." In closing, the prosecutor addressed Karen directly. "You violated every code, legal, moral, and human. You stole years from Maria's life, you stole a life in Shaw's, and you terrorized a community. Your sentence must reflect the horror of your actions." After arguments, the judge delivered the sentence. Karen Peterson was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The courtroom gasped as the words echoed, "Life without parole." Deputies led her away. She met my eyes for a fleeting moment, her face ashen, her entitlement stripped bare. Outside, the world felt quieter, as if exhaling. Neighbors gathered, hugging us, offering flowers. Lopez, the community gardener, knelt to Maria's chair with a bouquet of sunflowers, symbols of hope. Mia, Lily's friend from the pond attack story, waved a small flag that read, "Justice for all." That afternoon, Maria and I returned home under a light snow. The dialysis generator hummed faithfully, its circuit dedicated to her machine alone. I wheeled her to the pond's edge, now festooned with yellow ribbons. She touched the railing, silent tears in her eyes. "We're free," she whispered. I wrapped an arm around her. "More than free. We're stronger," I replied. Months later, the HOA was disbanded, replaced by a community trust committee. Bylaws now explicitly exempted medical equipment and forbade private enforcement. The old decorative HOA security SUV rusted in a corner lot, its patches removed and its engine silent. In our living room, I mounted Karen's sentencing order alongside Maria's survivor bracelet. Each morning, I wheeled her past them on our way to dialysis, but now the stop was ours, not a battleground. One spring dawn, Maria took a tentative step with her walker, another victory carved from suffering. I cheered, tears streaming. She turned, eyes bright. "We did it." I nodded, heart full. "We did." And through it all, one truth remained. Rules meant to serve community must never be twisted into weapons of cruelty. Those who try must face the full weight of justice and rot in its certainty. The end.